For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sanel Lamini. Beyers de Vos joins me to discuss his novel titled Talion. Welcome, Beyers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is your first novel. Can you briefly tell our viewers what this book is about?
So it's a crime novel, and it follows a young student from Pretoria named Freya, who sees her twin brother is murdered in front of her, and she sees the man who she thinks is the murderer, and the police don't catch him. And then a couple of months later, she sees him in a bar, and she follows him home, and she begins stalking him. So she becomes obsessed with him.
Where did the idea of this story come from?
So I wrote this as part of a master's thesis at the University of Cape Town, and I was sitting one night with my dad talking through different ideas I had for my novel, and he told me the story of this young woman who sees her brother get murdered, and we started discussing that idea, and by the end of the night I had kind of the whole plot. So I thank my dad for that as well.
So somehow it's based on a true story?
No, I just think I think my brother and sister are twins, so my dad had this idea of the two of them at the University of Pretoria, and then from there just kind of snowballed into this.
Yeah, tell us about the storyline being based in Pretoria. Is there a specific reason for that?
I'm from Pretoria, I grew up there, so I think, and I went to university there, I think I just felt very comfortable with the setting.
The location.
Also, Johannesburg and Cape Town are a bit cliched, I think, in our crime novel, so I wanted to use a city that wasn't either of those two. So Pretoria was quite interesting to write about. Yeah.
Were there any challenges while you were writing this book?
Yes, it's got a very structured timeline, and things have to be very carefully controlled because I jump back and forth a lot. So it was very challenging making sure that made sense and that worked out. I had to plot it very carefully, and I moved things around so often that it became quite complicated to keep track of, but hopefully there are no mistakes.
Yeah, and it also focuses on corruption and inefficiency within the police service, which is prevalent in our country anyway. What was your research for this book?
I will say that I spoke to a couple of people in the police force, just more so to get the procedure of it down, to make sure that was accurate. I also read quite a lot of crime essay statistics, and sort of their research based around crimes are solved, to make sure that was accurate. Also, the police officer in this novel is based on a real police officer that I encountered, and so there were 3 police officers that I encountered. I was at a crime. I was pulled over, and there were these 3 police officers there, and that scene is recreated in the book. And just sort of the dynamic I picked up that night, I try to take that and take the statistics or take my research and kind of flesh it out from there. Yeah.
And are there specific characters or scenes based on real people other than the one you've just told us about?
Yeah, so that scene is based on something real that happened to me and my friends. Obviously, I changed the characters in the book to suit that, and I think the murder victim, the brother Ben, who we meet in a couple of flashbacks, a lot of his experiences are my experiences because he's a student at the University of Pretoria. So I used a lot of that from my own life to fill out his experiences. But other than that, I think it's mainly my imagination.
And the response, how has it been since the book came out?
It's been quite positive. It's gotten a couple of cool reviews. People have seemed to respond quite well to it. I think hopefully people appreciate that it tries to do something new with the genre, and people seem to have been quite responsive to that. So that's cool.
And what kind of conversations have you had from people who've read the book?
There've been a lot of, I think most of the conversations have been around how the book doesn't quite follow the normal crime novel pattern or formula. So I try and experiment with that a little, and people have responded very well to that. And then I think, a lot of our crime fiction is produced by people who are older, who are in their 50s or in their 60s. So I think people are responding quite positively to the fact that it's a new voice, or that I'm quite young. That seems to have gotten quite a positive response. I didn't think that I was doing anything new or different just because I was younger, but I think just the way that a new generation handles social relationships and talks about things like race or corruption or describes those relationships in a novel, I think is maybe refreshing. People seem to have at least commented that it is refreshing. So I didn't. That's nothing I did on purpose, but I think maybe it's just a new generation coming in, writing about things in a different way.
Yeah, and what are you hoping people will get from this novel?
I hope that people. I hope that people enjoy reading it. I mean, it's thrilling, I think, hopefully, and it's pacey, and it is obviously a thriller, and there's a big twist at the end. So hopefully people just enjoy the story. It's quite dark. It's not necessarily, and I think maybe it can be quite frustrating, especially the end. So I hope it also makes people just think about the genre, about what this genre is capable of, and hopefully think about things like, the novel is about revenge and it's about retaliation, and I think in South Africa that is something that we all have to deal with. There's a lot of historical trauma, there's a lot of the conversations around revenge and making amends and reconciliation, and there's a lot of anger and grief and all of those things. I mean, this is a very personal story about a specific individual who goes through all of this, but I think I've tried to comment on those emotions or those very big themes in the context of this country, and hopefully I've encouraged people to go and think about those things.
And what can we expect from you in future?
I'm busy writing a second one. It's a bit of a sequel to this. So I have a detective character in this novel, and I've taken her, and it's a couple of years later, and she's got a new case. So it's another crime novel, and I'm hoping to have that done by the end of 2019.
For interest's sake, why crime? Why crime novel?
I don't know. I asked myself that question a lot. I didn't think I was going to write a crime novel until I had that conversation with my dad. But it's interesting if you put characters under that kind of pressure. They're immediately under a very extreme pressure. So it allows you to explore very people who have been involved in a crime have very. It's a lot of trauma, and these kind of big themes come out of that. So you've got grief, anger, revenge, loss, all of these things that then place those characters under a lot of pressure. And so you can kind of write about those very big themes. It's a kind of shortcut to talk about those things. And I think that's why it appeals to me so much. I also just kind of like puzzles. So it kind of thrills me to trick the reader. But I didn't see myself writing crime, so I'm quite surprised that this is the direction it's going. But it seems to be going quite well, so that's nice.
Thank you for your time, Beyers.
Thank you very much.
That was Beyers de Vos speaking to Crema Media's Polity about his novel titled Talion.